This is a training video for a Machzone Mini 3013 press brake fitted with a CYB8 CNC control system. The machine is a 2-axis machine. That means the back gauge is the X-axis and the bending beam is the Y-axis. Firstly, we turn the mains isolator on, which is located on the right hand side frame of the machine. Once the mains isolator is switched on, the CYB8 control will power up, and now we need to reset the guard switch and power the main pump on. So the guard switch is reset at the bottom there and the light comes on. That means that all emergency stops and all side gate and rear gate interlocks are now closed. And now if you hold the pump start button for 2 seconds, the pump powers up. If we press any emergency stop on the control, the pump turns off and you have to go through the same procedure to start the pump again. The same goes for any side gates that may be opened. The machine will power off and you need to go through the same procedure to restart. Now we'll go through some basic controls on the machine. You have a foot pedal station and you have right hand foot pedal is beam down, left hand foot pedal is beam up, and you also have an emergency stop button on the top of the foot pedal. On the main control panel you have another emergency stop with a white indicator light saying that the mains is on, and the reset button is for the guard reset. When it's reset, the light will be lit. Now around the right hand side of the machine, with the door open, you can see there is a mute position and TDC that needs to be set depending on what tooling you're using. The TDC height is generally set at the top position, so when the beam goes up it stops on the TDC switch, and the mute height is adjusted depending on what tooling you're using, and this changes the speed from fast to slow. So you set it so it's just above the workpiece when it changes from fast to slow speed or bending speed. You also have on the right hand side guard a guard muted light. This light lights up when the guard is muted, so when the beam reaches the mute position switch, the guard muted light will light up. This indicates the guards are now switched off, are in bending speed. On the electrical cabinet located on the right hand side frame of the machine is the mains isolator switch and a switch used for the guard, which is called stroke stop. So that means when the beam comes down in fast speed, it stops at stroke stop. You have to take your foot off the pedal and repress again to go into bending speed. when it's in stroke stop off position, the beam will come down when you press the foot pedal. It will not stop at stroke stop, but it will change to bending speed and carry on through the bend the component, and then come back up to the top position. So now we can go through the basics of programming the control. So this is a touchscreen control, so you can move around the screen by touching the icons, and you can see there's a manual movement screen, which we can either move the back gauge or the bending beam mechanical stops. So if we start the machine, and we're going to put it on back gauge, and we can jog the back gauge out or in. The same with the depth stops for the bending beam. To come out of that, back to the programming screen. There are other menus for service functions and machine parameters, but this is the main programming menu. So at the moment we have got program number 666 programmed in there, which has got 3 bends in, and this is bend 1 of 3. If we want to scroll through the bends, we can scroll through by using the arrow keys to take us from one bend to another. So now we have this position, which at the moment is defaulting to 1. If we put 2 in there, that will basically make bend number 1 stay as bend number 1 for 2 bends. So sometimes if you're doing a box and you want to do bend number 1, and you have 2 bends either side of the box. So we'll take that back to 1 by touching it. We want to select the material. There, so at the moment we have steel, 1mm, and that's the tenthile strength of the material. So we can go to aluminium, it's 1mm, that's the tenthile strength. Stainless steel, the same. We can change the thickness by just typing in the thickness. So now we've set this program to stainless steel 2mm. This function on this machine is for timers, and these are used for doing a pinch retract function, and we can set those, and I'll explain those later. This is the tooling we're going to use. So there's a tooling library set up in the machine of all the tools that you have. We've only got 3 programmed, and this is the tool we're using, which is an 88 degree 67mm height 0.8 nose rad. So we'll select that tool. The same on the dies. We have different dies programmed in there, and at the moment we have a 16mm die, and these are the parameters of that die that are already pre-programmed. So we're going to select that. This is the angle, so we can either program it in angles or in a direct length, and that's coining. So we can come down and just coin the tools together, but we generally use it in angles. So to change the angle, we can enter that. 135 degrees is a 45-degree fold, so it's an inclusive angle. This is corrections to the angle, so the first bend that we fold with the material you have, we do a test bend and we measure the angle you've folded, and then we enter that into that box, and it will automatically put a correction in so that the next fold will be the correct angle. This function is for the back gauge, so we can program the back gauge in two ways: either direct bending, which is we program in 50 millimeters, and that will give you 50 millimeters inside bend. If we touch that, this will give us outside bends, so we program 50 millimeters, and then it will give us 50 millimeters measuring outside bend, so it will take allowance for the bend allowance. And you can also correct as necessary if we're slightly out on that. So that's generally how you'd program the first bend, and then we have some options in the background. So we have length of material, so we can turn it on, put in your length of material. You can have the back gauge retraction on, which means we can put in how far the back gauge is going to retract once the machine has pinched the material. This one is you can program the height the machine comes up after bending. So if we leave it off, it will go all the way up to the TDC switch. If we turn it on, and I know on this machine 0.4 will keep it within the mute position of the guards, so that means the machine will only come up a small amount to clear the material, and then you can move the material to the next bend and then re-bend again without coming out of the guard. This is delay at the end of stroke. Sometimes when you've bent maybe stainless steel, you want the material to flow a little bit more, so we might put in there 0.5 of a second, so it holds the pressure on the material for half a second before it releases and goes back up. We can also put in a parts count, so on that we can do 10 parts and then the machine will stop, and then it will recount again 10 parts after you've started it. This one is external start, so if you have the back gauge out at a wide position, say 300 millimeters, and the next fold is coming into 50 millimeters, but you need to remove the material from the machine before the back gauge comes in. If you turn that function on, the back gauge won't come in until you press the pedal to start, and then the back gauge will move to the next position. So we'll just turn those functions off that we've programmed for the minute and go back to the main program. That concludes our short training video on the operation of the Machzone Mini 3013 press brake. Thanks for watching.